I lost my parents suddenly and was engulfed in deep grief. To me, in that state, my mother-in-law proclaimed, "No need to worry, I will make my home in your parents' residence." In this way, without my consent, my mother-in-law ended up living in my parents' house on her own accord. No matter how much I begged, she showed no intention of leaving. The action I took against this was, "My name is Emily. I have been married to my husband John for 10 years. Since John's father is no longer in this world, our relationship with my mother-in-law naturally became very close. My mother-in-law had a relatively good relationship with my parents, and the annual family trip had become a regular event to deepen our bond with them. My family owns a villa in a summer resort, which has become the fixed lodging for our trips. My mother-in-law was very fond of this villa, always saying with emotion, 'I want to live here.' However, those peaceful days came to an abrupt end. My parents passed away involved in an accident. The shock made it impossible for me to go to work, and I fell into mild depression. During this time, my husband, John, silently continued to support me. As I began to truly accept my parents' passing, John started saying, 'To be honest, there's been a lawyer wanting to discuss inheritance matters for a while now.' I asked them to wait until Emily felt emotionally stable. 'Is it okay to talk about it now?' It seems that the inheritance issue was put on hold by the lawyer until I was mentally stable. I deeply appreciated my husband's thoughtfulness and contacted the lawyer. The lawyer kindly made his way to our home. Since Emily is the only child and the other relatives have already passed away, you are the sole heir," he explained, detailing my parents' estate. At that moment, the doorbell rang. The visitor was my mother-in-law. "Hello. I heard you have recovered, so I thought I'd drop by. How about some tea?" She entered the room without hesitation, holding a gift. Mother. Actually, we are in the middle of handling inheritance procedures right now." "Oh, that's convenient. Actually, I wanted to talk about that. You know the lovely villa your parents owned? I wanted to talk about that." In front of the lawyer, she boldly stated this. Shocked and taken aback, both the lawyer and I responded, "Excuse me, what are you saying? You don't have any inheritance rights, do you?" "I'm well aware of that. You are the only heir, right? So, all that property belongs to you?" "Yes, the lawyer was just explaining that to me. But since you married into our family, what's yours is mine as well, right?" "No, that's not right." Following this exchange, the lawyer intervened and explained to the mother-in-law that you have no inheritance rights, and she reluctantly left. After my mother-in-law left, we resumed our conversation about the inheritance. At that time, the lawyer handed me a letter from my parents. The letter read as follows. "We do not know how long our lives will last, but it's certain that Emily will outlive us. The villa we bought is meant to serve as an investment to support Emily when she finds herself alone. Once we're gone, do not hesitate to let go of the villa. Use the funds obtained to realize Emily's wishes." Despite the sudden news of my parents' passing, it seemed they had prepared this letter in advance for such an eventuality and entrusted it to the lawyer. My dream, as mentioned in the letter, was to start my own cafe. John had always supported this dream, and I had been gaining knowledge about cafe management while working. However, gathering the necessary funds was difficult, and there were times when I nearly gave up on my dream. Yet, my parents never forgot about it. John quietly encouraged me, "Tours held back, realizing your dream was your parents' greatest hope. Let's sell the villa." "Yes, I'll do that." Letting go of the villa filled with memories was hard, but John's encouragement helped me to resolve to move forward. After the inheritance procedures went smoothly, about a month had passed and we had returned to our peaceful daily lives. That's when I realized we hadn't contacted my mother-in-law since that day. The last time I spoke with my mother-in-law was during that discussion about the inheritance. After ending on such discord, I'm a bit worried. John comforted me, saying, "It's okay. My mother was just a bit upset then. Maybe I should contact her. How about we have a meal together somewhere?" When I actually called my mother-in-law, she responded with a surprisingly cheerful voice, and I felt relieved. Mother, I'm sorry for not being in touch for a while. We were busy with the inheritance procedures. Don't worry about it, dear. So, did everything go well with the procedures? Yes, it's all settled now. I'm sorry about that time. There's nothing to worry about. Whether I own it or not, it doesn't bother me. What do you mean? What I mean is, even if you are the owner, it doesn't mean I can't live there. You're busy, and managing a villa is tough, right? So, I decided I'd live there and take care of it. You're living in that villa? Yes, exactly. I've already moved in, so don't worry. Wait, what do you mean you moved already? Do you mean you're already living in that villa? Since you seem busy. I had everything arranged by a professional moving company. How about visiting once a year or so? Surprisingly, without consulting us, my mother-in-law had gone ahead and moved into my parents' villa. That's a problem. That house is no longer ours. Now it was my mother-in-law's turn to be surprised, not ours. What do you mean? That villa was your parents' property, right? Since they passed away, it should have become yours. Indeed, I inherited it temporarily. However, respecting my parents' wishes, the villa has been sold. Sold? Why would you do such a thing? I'm sorry for not noticing you earlier. We were caught up in the sale process right after the inheritance, and I intended to report back later. It's too late for that now. All my belongings have already been moved to the villa, and I've let go of the apartment I lived in. I have no other options. My mother-in-law was not one to back down. Since you've decided to sell it on your own, you should take responsibility and repurchase it. The money from the sale is still untouched, right? That settles it. Please do it. Without waiting for a response, my mother-in-law ended the call. Later, my husband tried to calm her down, but my mother-in-law refused to budge. I've decided this house is mine. I will not leave under any circumstances. She was determined not to move out, no matter what. We had no choice but to consult with the real estate agency that handled the sale of the villa. I have to tell you that we had a little misunderstanding and my mother-in-law has moved into the villa. What? The real estate staff was also surprised by the situation, especially since it had been less than a week since the sale. Considering these circumstances, would it be possible to repurchase the villa? The staff answered with a troubled look. Regarding that, unfortunately, a new buyer has already been found. The villa, located in a popular summer resort and well-maintained thanks to my parents' regular upkeep, was in excellent condition. However, we didn't expect it to find a buyer so quickly. Now, repurchasing it has become impossible. We had to somehow make my mother-in-law leave. In a panic, we contacted my mother-in-law. Mother, the villa has already been purchased by someone new. There's a new owner now. What? You mean it can be repurchased? That's correct. Therefore, it's necessary for you to leave as soon as possible. I can't accept that. Unless you find me another place to stay. Why should I have to do that? You want me to leave, right? The least thing you can do is to help me with that. I can't do that. If we had the means, we wouldn't have sold the villa in the first place. Maybe you should consider repurchasing your original home and moving back there? In any case, the villa now belongs to someone else. We need you to leave as soon as possible. I ended the call with my voice raised. Regardless of her being my mother-in-law, she can't just live on someone else's property. This needs to be resolved quickly. However, I hadn't fully grasped my mother-in-law's true nature yet. A week later, my mother-in-law contacted me again. Emily, the keys to the house aren't working. The keys to the house. Didn't you manage to repurchase your original home? What are you talking about? I'm talking about the keys to your villa. What? You haven't left the villa yet. It appeared that my mother-in-law had ignored my warnings and continued to stay at the villa. Indeed, the real estate agency had mentioned changing the locks when we handed over the villa. It seems the locks were changed while my mother-in-law was out, leaving her locked out with no way to access the villa, even with a spare key. I can't get inside now. Do something immediately. That's not possible. The property has already been sold, and the real estate agency is in charge of the keys. Changing the locks means the new owner could arrive at any time. Please, you must leave as soon as possible. Do you intend to throw a frail old woman out on the streets? I have nowhere else to go. I know you gave up your original residence and moved to the villa. Moreover, without the keys, I can't even organize my belongings in the room. To leave, I first need a proper set of keys that work. So, you're saying if you get the keys, you'll organize your belongings and leave promptly? Yes, if I get the keys. I'll start arranging for my move right away. Understood. Before my mother-in-law could change her mind, I quickly contacted the real estate agency and managed to get a spare key. I immediately went to the villa and handed the keys to my mother-in-law. As promised, please organize your belongings and leave immediately. Yes, I'll proceed with the move as promised. However, despite daily check-ins, her responses remained vague, indicating a lack of intent to leave the villa. My patience was wearing thin. Mother, are you really preparing to move? To my query, my mother-in-law coolly replied, yes, of course. But you know, it takes time to prepare at my age. I can't say how much time I'll need. Taking time. You know the new owner is arriving soon, right? Feel free to come and see. The new owner wouldn't dare to evict an elderly woman from her home. No matter how many times they come, I'll send them out. I felt trapped. My mother-in-law never intended to leave the villa in the first place. She tricked me into getting a new key for her. From that moment on, my mother-in-law became a clear adversary. However, I couldn't think of a solution to make her leave. After a week of anguish, John, who was also troubled by the same problem, urgently called me over to his computer. Emily, look at this. He pointed to a video by a popular YouTube creator. Incredibly, it was our parents' villa on the screen. The YouTuber had purchased the cabin as a video editing workspace, but an unknown elderly woman was living there, and they had turned the incident into an entertaining video. The video even captured my mother-in-law chasing away the YouTuber with a menacing look. We immediately contacted my mother-in-law. Mom, a YouTube creator visited the villa, didn't they? Who are you talking about? My mother-in-law seemed to have no idea who the new owner was. She was completely unaware that she had been featured on YouTube and watched by many. Someone claiming to be the property owner came to visit, right? What was discussed during their visit? Yes, they came by the other day, but I drove them away. They were fussing about it being illegal, but so what? Once I'm living here, it's my place. Were you asked anything specific when you drove them away? They did say something about being the owner and what I'm doing is illegal. If I didn't leave, they would make it public in a video. And how did you respond? I told them to do as they like. Being filmed doesn't bother me at all. So, you basically gave permission for the filming? It wasn't much of a problem. John then explained the gravity of the situation to her, including the fact that the owner was a well-known YouTube content creator and that her face was now exposed to the world as a result of her consent to the filming. My mother-in-law was shocked to realize that her image was being seen by people all over the world. What? People all around the world are seeing my face? By the time she realized it, it was already too late. The video of my mother-in-law rudely and selfishly driving away the YouTube creator sparked outrage among the video's fans. The villa's location was quickly identified, leading to protesters gathering daily in front of the villa. Unable to withstand the constant visits and protests from fans, my mother-in-law finally fled the villa. Emily, I've fled the villa. Can I take refuge at your place for a while? I refuse. I can't let you stay with us. Why not? How can you abandon a parent in trouble? Who do you think caused this situation? You are now publicly known as a self-centered and inconsiderate person. Being associated with you could bring us trouble as well. If I had known the person was famous, I would have left sooner. That's exactly the problem with your self-centeredness. It's a nuisance to stay in someone else's home without permission, no matter who it is. I just wanted that villa. That villa was a place filled with precious memories for our family. I don't want any more to do with someone who would use it without permission like you did. What do you mean you don't want anything to do with me? It means I'm cutting off our relationship with you. John would never agree to do something like that. This was John's idea. I simply agreed with him. How can I endure a life exposed to people's criticism without a place to live? You brought the criticism on yourself, didn't you? I asked you to leave many times, but you wouldn't listen. Now it's too convenient for you to ask for help. Faced with my decision, my mother-in-law finally gave up and left. She continues to move from one short-stay apartment to another, afraid of being recognized by people who know her. It won't be long before her savings run out. When we went to collect my mother-in-law's belongings, we took the opportunity to apologize to the YouTube creator. The YouTube creator, far from being angry, showed empathy towards us and offered words of encouragement, saying, "Don't worry about it." The video had gained attention and increased views, and he actually thanked and comforted us for it. Years passed, and with the funds from the sale of the villa, I finally managed to open the cafe I had always dreamed of. Fortunately, the cafe was busy from the first day of opening. "Hey, look at this." John showed me a video made by the YouTube creator. The video featured the cafe I had opened. As I was surprised, John shared a secret with me. Actually, I've been in touch with him from time to time after that incident. I talked about your dream of opening a cafe, so he must have decided to feature it to help us out. Thanks to my parents' villa, which made the connection with the YouTube creator. Thanks to his support, my cafe is doing well in sales. I'm sure my parents are happy for us in heaven. One day, I suddenly found out that my husband was having an affair. Busy with caring for my father-in-law, who suffers from dementia, and raising my young daughter, I had no idea that my husband had been cheating. It seems that my husband had already decided to marry his mistress and was considering divorcing me beforehand. Faced with such a cruel reality, I felt like I couldn't bear it. Since it'll cause problems for my second marriage, you take care of the kid and dad. He said this to me without warning. Despite the shock I was still going through, I have nothing but regret when I think about how we got to this situation. Even though I continued to care for my father-in-law, for the sake of my husband whom I loved, how could he have an affair? Was I just some convenient housekeeper? If he really feels that way, then he's worse than I thought. However, back then, we didn't know what kind of ending awaited us. I am Melanie Stewart. I'm 35 years old, a homemaker, and I handle the daily chores at my in-laws' house. My family consists of my husband, Greg, our 4-year-old daughter, Erin, and my father-in-law, making us a family of 4. Early in our marriage, my husband and I lived in an apartment, and I had been working full-time. However, my mother-in-law passed away 6 months after I gave birth to our daughter. I can't leave my dad alone, not now that he's by himself. My husband said, so we moved into his parents' house. About 3 years have passed since we moved in, and I've gotten used to life here, but these past few months have brought significant changes to my life. That is, I went from being a working woman to a full-time homemaker. After moving to my in-laws' house, I still continued working at the same place as before. But one day, about 3 months ago, while I was cleaning up after a meal, my father-in-law asked me a question. "Melanie, what day is it today?" "Huh? Today? It's the 3rd. Right. It's Thursday, isn't it?" "Yes, that's right." "No, it's Friday today. Look, it's written on the calendar over there." "Is that so?" "Sorry, I've been forgetting the days lately." At that time, I thought my father-in-law had just made a simple mistake. However, his behavior worsened day by day. He wanted to eat again right after finishing a meal, or he forgot where he put things. Clearly, the situation was not normal. Worried, I suggested that he see a doctor, but he kindly refused, and I couldn't say anything else. I couldn't take care of my father-in-law by myself. His symptoms might worsen, but I couldn't just overlook this and do nothing about it. So, I decided to tell my husband Greg about my father-in-law's condition. Since my husband always leaves home earlier than me and returns after my father-in-law has already gone to bed, he didn't know about his father's condition. In other words, my husband was not aware of my father-in-law's daily life. Usually, I would go to bed earlier with my daughter, but that night, I decided to stay awake, waiting for my husband to return home. Just after 1 a.m., I finally heard the sound of the front door opening. "Melanie, why are you still up?" My husband looked surprised to see me as he entered the living room. Seeing him roused me from my sleepiness, and I immediately started talking about my father-in-law. "There's something about your dad I need to talk about." "My dad? What happened?" "Your father's behavior has been strange lately. He's losing track of dates, asking about meals right after eating, and he's becoming very forgetful. It's not just ordinary forgetfulness, really." "What? My dad is finally losing it?" "Huh. Well, he is over 70. Maybe that's just how it is. This is serious. We should take him to the hospital." As soon as I mentioned the hospital, my husband's expression changed. He was obviously displeased. He sighed heavily and then said in a reluctant tone, "The hospital? Aren't you overreacting? He's just a little forgetful." "No, I'm telling you, it's not just forgetfulness. Something is clearly wrong." "Well then, how about you take my dad to the hospital? I'm too busy with work. Please, just handle it yourself." I had planned to do that, but your dad refused when I asked him. So I thought I needed your support. If my dad doesn't want to go to the hospital, there's no need to force him. I'd appreciate it if you didn't indulge in self-satisfaction though. After saying that, Greg grabbed a beer from the fridge and started using his smartphone. When he gets like this, my words don't reach him. "I'm going to bed. Good night." I didn't get a reply, and I quietly left the living room with a sigh. I kept regularly checking with my father-in-law, but he stubbornly refused to go to the hospital. My father-in-law didn't always show symptoms of dementia. There were moments when he was very lucid. I wondered if it would be better to keep an eye on him at home for a while longer. Then one day, my father-in-law spoke to me with a serious expression. "Melanie, I need to talk to you." "What's wrong?" "Melanie, you've noticed my behavior has been abnormal lately, haven't you?" "Well, sometimes I feel strange about it myself. So, I hate to ask, but could you consider quitting your job and staying at home?" "Excuse me?" I was momentarily speechless at his unexpected request. I never dreamed he would ask me that. "What do you mean?" As I asked, confused, he answered with heavy words. "When everyone's away during the day, I've started to feel a bit scared to be alone. I'll manage the living expenses. So can I ask you to do this? But we should go to the hospital first." "Melanie, you were just saying, the atmosphere at work has changed, and it's hard to be there now, right? Maybe this is a chance to quit and look for a new job. I'd like you to consider taking a break from work, even temporarily." Please, Melanie. I can't ask anyone else." Seeing my father-in-law pleading desperately, I was at a loss for words. Also, truthfully, I had been wanting to quit my job. Recently, the management at my workplace had changed, completely altering the work environment. It was no longer the comfortable and friendly place it used to be, and some of my close colleagues had already left. I had considered resigning too, but my daughter is still young, and I was worried about our future living expenses. I knew that I needed to keep working. However, searching for a new job while continuing my current one was not an easy task. Given these circumstances, my father-in-law's proposal seemed very appealing. With his financial support, I could have time to look for a new job. Sensing my hesitation, he continued in a warm voice. "Once you find a new job, Melanie, I'll go to the hospital and, if necessary, move into a facility." "Move into a facility? I don't want to cause any trouble once you've found a new job, so until then, could you look after me?" "Father, this is my first and last request to you. I'd be happy if you could indulge me." After discussing this with Greg, I decided to quit my current job and take care of my father-in-law until I found a new one. Caring for him mainly involved supporting his daily life and preparing meals, nothing too burdensome. He provided a certain amount of money to us each month for living and caregiving expenses. Thanks to this, I was able to spend more time with my daughter, and I deeply appreciated his support. 2 months into my life as a homemaker, I had almost secured a new job. After the final interview and receiving a job offer, I immediately went to tell my father-in-law. However, it seemed he was on the phone. I couldn't hear the details of the conversation, so I waited until he finished before opening the door. "Excuse me, father. May I have a moment?" "Melanie, did you hear my phone call just now?" "No, I didn't listen. I noticed that you were on the phone, so I waited." "I see. Did you need something?" "Yes. I found a new job and wanted to tell you." When I told him this, he brightened up and said joyfully, "That's wonderful. Congratulations." As if he were the one with good news. Now that my new job was settled, the only thing left to do was to arrange to take him to a medical facility. I planned to set the schedule as soon as the next day. That night, however, my husband, who usually comes home late, returned a little after 7 p.m. When I greeted him with "You're home early today?" he emotionlessly dropped his work bag on the floor and coldly said, "I'm marrying her, so I want a divorce." "What did you say?" I couldn't continue speaking, in total shock. Greg continued talking, indifferent to how upset I was. "Did you not hear me? I said I'm marrying her, and it's over with you. I brought the divorce papers, so sign them right now." "Wait a minute. What is this? All of a sudden? We have Aaron, and you can't just decide on divorce like that. Don't just decide things by yourself. I don't care about you and Aaron anymore. Thanks to you not noticing, I've been able to continue my relationship with my other woman. I do thank you for that. How could you?" Apparently, my husband Greg had already decided to marry his mistress and had been planning our divorce. This sudden revelation was too cruel and hard for me to accept. While I was reeling from this, Greg added another blow. "Since it'll cause problems for my second marriage, you take care of the kid and dad." He said this without giving me any time to emotionally prepare. I wondered how we had fallen into this situation. I had devotedly cared for his father, treating him as a part of our family. Why would Greg have an affair? Did he only see me as a convenient housekeeper? If so, it really is too much to bear. Overwhelmed, I glared at Greg and raised my voice in anger. "Stop being so selfish. How can you think I would accept that? Whether you accept it or not, it doesn't matter. It's already decided." What about Aaron? That's why I'm saying you should take her. And while you're at it, the annoying father with dementia too, huh? How can you say such things about your own father? You quit your job of your own accord, so I have no obligation to help you, right? If you can understand that much, then get out immediately. At that moment, I felt as if my heart broke. I realized that I could no longer be involved with this man. That left me with no choice but to take care of Aaron and my father-in-law myself. "Fine. I'll agree to the divorce and leave, but don't ever come into our lives again." At that, Greg smirked maliciously and replied, "Of course. Do whatever you want, ha!" Trembling with anger, I signed the divorce papers he thrust at me and then took them to submit to the office. When I returned home, Greg was gone, and he had left a message on my smartphone. The message read, "I'm going to live at my mistress's house until we find another place." Although I stood up to Greg, I hadn't found a place to go yet. Even if I started looking for a new home right away, it would take some time. As I was pondering what to do next, my father-in-law approached me, saying, "Can we talk for a moment?" "Father, I'm a bit busy right now. I have a lot to do." "About what you're going to do next, right?" "Don't worry, I've already prepared a room for us." "A room? Why?" "I hate to say this, but I overheard your conversation earlier. I anticipated something like this might happen soon, so I rented a room in advance." "Really? If you look at these, you'll understand," he said, pulling out several photographs from a brown envelope. The photos showed Greg cheating with an unknown woman. "Father, what is this?" "I'm sorry. Actually, I had suspected my son's infidelity for a while." "What do you mean?" I asked in surprise. Listening to my father-in-law, he explained that a few months ago, he woke up late at night to go to the bathroom and accidentally discovered Greg talking on the phone with his mistress. After that, my father-in-law had one of his friends who works at a detective agency investigate Greg's affair. To prepare for a potential divorce, my father-in-law pretended to have dementia, urged me to improve my work situation, and recommended I change jobs. He secretly planned all this, not revealing Greg's infidelity until my life had become stable enough to handle it. He had even prepared an apartment in advance of any unforeseen circumstances. A $3 million tower mansion with significant asset value. He had been investing for a while and used the insurance money from my mother-in-law's death for our sake. Father, I can't thank you enough for all this. Don't mention it, Melanie. I should be the one thanking you for making my days enjoyable. That's so. Come on, let's move out. He thinks I've lost my mind, so now it's time for a counterattack, he whispered, revealing his plan to me. I was shocked by the surprising contents, but he smiled mischievously, as if plotting something. Then, 2 weeks later, when I contacted Greg after moving, I immediately got an angry call. Before I could start speaking, Greg shouted at me, "What is this? What are you planning? Don't yell so loudly." I calmly responded, "What's going on? Answer me." He continued furiously, "Why are you so angry?" I asked quietly, "Don't mess with me. How did you destroy my family home?" Greg raged. This was the scheme my father-in-law had told me about. The plan was to demolish Greg's family's house, making it impossible for him to return. In his confusion, I revealed the truth to him. "You blame me, but this wasn't my doing. It was your father's." "What? Why would he do that? He's supposed to be senile, isn't he?" Greg argued. "That was all a lie." "A lie? What do you mean?" "Your father knew about your infidelity and pretended to have dementia to protect me." "What? It was all an act. You set me up?" Greg yelled over the phone. As I pondered how to respond, my father-in-law took the phone from me and calmly said, "This is the result of the seeds you have sown. Just so you know, you won't inherit anything from me." "What? You're joking, right?" Greg exclaimed in shock. "I bought this apartment for Melanie and Aaron's future. I've also arranged for my own care facility. You won't get a penny from me." "That's ridiculous." "Wait a minute. I thought I had my own house and an inheritance from you." "Unfortunately, Melanie has already consulted with a lawyer and we're seeking damages from you and your mistress. Are you prepared?" "Wait, please. No." Ignoring Greg's scream, my father-in-law ruthlessly hung up the phone. Handing the phone back to me, he told me with a kind smile, "From now on, be free and happy." Afterwards, we filed to receive damages through a lawyer from Greg and his mistress, who it turns out was his subordinate at work. Both were transferred to separate branches, resulting in significant salary cuts. Despite their requests that we lower the amount of damages, I firmly refused. Meanwhile, my daughter and I are living comfortably in the apartment that my father-in-law prepared for us. It's conveniently located near the station, making it easy to commute to my new job. Unbeknownst to us, my father-in-law had arranged to move into a facility by himself, where he's now living enjoyably with his new friends. We visit him several times a month, talking and feeling reassured at seeing him so happy. Grateful for everything that my father-in-law has done for us, my daughter and I plan to continue our happy lives together.